Hi, this is Rabbi Tzvi Mandel of Congregation Kahal B'nai Yisrael. Community of Jewish friends, and I'd like to thank everybody for the compliments. And yes, it's true, the last Mishnah was very deep. And if we could say that the other one, the last Mishnah, Mishnah 5, or rather 6, was deep but simple, this coming Mishnah 7 is simple but deep. So, listen, and with Hashem's help, we'll hear some beautiful things. Says the Mishnah, Mishnah 7, chapter 5, Mishnah 7. Shiva Dvarim B'Gailam, there are 7 things in a Gailam. A Gailam means an unfinished utensil. So to a person also sometimes, whether in his character or in his wisdom, is not finished, an unfinished product, says the Bartanura. V'shiva b'chacham, 7 by a wise person, the opposite by a wise person. Chacham, a wise person, he does not speak in front of someone who's greater than him in wisdom, as we find in the Torah that Elazar and Isama, the children of Aaron, didn't answer their father when Moshe, Uncle Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was angry at them, and instead Moshe's brother Aaron answered for them. Number 2, he does not talk or enter to talk, literally, while his friend is speaking. Next is Ve'ena Nivala Hashiv. He's not fast to answer. He doesn't have quick answers right on the spot. Know some people like that? I do. Ve'ena Nivala Hashiv. He's not fast to answer. Shoyel ke'inyan u'meshav kalacha. It seems to be, it's one thing, the way the Bartanura explains it. He asks according to the subject being spoken about, and he answers according to the halacha. What does this mean? In the subject that's being spoken about, in the case of a rebbe or a teacher teaching a certain halacha, if the student would ask about something in a different subject, then he'll mix up the teacher. As we find the Talmud says in the beginning of Tractate Shabbos, that even the great Rebbe, Rabbeinu Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, compiled all the Mishnah and Talmud. He was so great, but still he said, when I'm learning one thing, don't ask me something else. Same thing we find with the righteous people that weren't able to bring the sacrifice of the Passover sacrifice because they were impure. They saw that Moses, our teacher, was busy with the laws of Pesach, so then they asked him what to do, and the Torah speaks about the second Passover, right? Pesach Sheni. Next. Yeah. Next is and he speaks about the first thing first and the second thing second. We find this by Hashem himself, God himself, when Moshe, in the beginning of Shemos, says, who am I to go to Pharaoh? And second of all, he asks, am I going to take the Jewish people, Jewish children out of Egypt? And Hashem answered him on the first question first, I will be with you, so you don't have to worry about Pharaoh. And about the people, when they will go out of Egypt finally, they will be worshiping me on the mountain, which is the purpose of the going out of Egypt to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. So he answered it first, and the second. Next, and something that he didn't hear about, he says, I didn't hear. We'll soon see. So he just wasn't lying? Is that what it was? We'll see later. Umoida al ha'emes, he admits to the truth, even though he might be able to play around with what he said and make himself right, sound smart, doesn't bother to answer himself, so to say, to make right what he had said just so that he should be right, but rather no, he admits to the truth. And the opposite is true by the goyim, the unfinished product. Let's go back to the beginning. So first, the Tiferes has some very beautiful things to say over here. Mem Gimel. Okay. He says, basically, we're not talking about a fool altogether, but rather we're talking about someone who is not completely finished in his character, though he himself is a chacham, is a wise person, and just not finished. The other commentaries say that it talks about every human being, every person. And that's why first it speaks, first it says, Shividvarim Begailim, that we're going to speak about the unfinished product, and then the wise person, and it goes on to speak about the wise person because it just means to say that every person, as he grows up, becomes more mature, and it's nothing terrible if someone sees in himself all or any of these traits. The mission is just trying to teach us how to grow up. Just like the previous mission speaks about how beautiful and how special it is. Our people, our history, the temple, and all the whole creation of the world, how much Hashem loves us so much and did all this for us. This mission speaks about what Hashem expects for us, should we say, or we should be encouraged by all these things so that we know we'll be growing in this way, and this is part of the growth. And the Mishnah continues and says, first thing was that he doesn't speak in front of someone that's greater than him in wisdom, others say, or in years also, others say in years also. So, in wisdom, this is something very interesting. Even though one might be more wise than the other person, but sometimes someone who's either more wise or older might understand something better than a younger person because of his experiences in life. Rabbi Yochanan, the Talmud says in Kedushin 33a, that the holy Amari Rabbi Yochanan, the great sage Rabbi Yochanan, the great righteous Rabbi Yochanan, would stand up in front of a non-Jewish idol worshiper even, because this man has been through much more in life than I've been. And the tests of life is also wisdom. Okay. There's another issue here, as the Gemara says, the Mishnah says in Idias, that once there was a big to-do between the sages, the holy sages of the Chazal, greatest people that ever lived, and there were two simple people that knew the answer. And they admitted it. Well, they know. Okay. Okay. The next thing is, don't enter in the middle of your friends speaking. When one has a discussion or an argument with his friend, don't mix him up. First, allow him to speak out completely what his view is so as not to mix him up. And if you're truly wise, then you're looking for the truth. Then you want to hear what he says. Maybe he's right, or maybe he has a point that you didn't think about. I didn't think about this point. Or maybe together you'll come to a medium. First of all, it's not right to embarrass your friend. And second of all, even if he's your student, don't make him feel as if it's not important. His point is not important. Because all that is just being haughty about Gaiva. And the Talmud says that Hashem says, someone who's a big shot and I cannot be together. God doesn't even want to look at one who is a big shot, who's haughty. And also we mentioned before the Rambam, Maimonides, in the Laws of Talmud Torah says that just like a student must respect his teacher, so too a teacher must respect his student. Very important. Next thing is Ve'eina Nivel Hashiv. He doesn't answer fast. When his friend finished speaking and he has something to answer immediately, still and all he doesn't say it. He thinks about his own answer within himself and he makes order to what he has to say, so it should make sense how and what he's going to say, and that way he says it. He asks about the subject that's being spoken about and he answers according to the correct halacha. They both seem to be saying the same thing. So the Tiferes says this refers to that derech eretz is real respect for others is that when you give the answer, so you don't go off on a tangent to 50 other things to show how smart you are and all the different important things that are not important to this subject, but rather the person will be straight to answer what was asked about and stay on the subject. Next thing is what was asked first is answered first, what's asked second is answered second. When one is asked something that has two questions to it, so again he answers in an orderly fashion because this is a very important point. Seder, in all things, being orderly in whatever it might be, is a siman l'chachma. Is proof of wisdom. Whether it's in life, whether it's in speaking, whether it's in wisdom, whether it's in whatever it might be. Orderly is the correct way. Sign of wisdom. Next thing is umad alemis. He admits to the truth. It might be in the middle of something that he has to say, and basically he has it together. But there's one point that he doesn't. So he says, on this point, I don't know. In other words, he doesn't disregard what he doesn't know so that he should sound smart, but rather he says, this part of it I'm not clearing. It's the opposite by one who's not complete. let's see a little bit more what's going on over here on a deeper level. This is the simple that's deep, right? Says the Heilig Lubavitcher a very special thing. He doesn't speak in front of someone who is greater than him. The wise person knows how wise he is. He has no problem with self-confidence. And it's important for a person to know his virtues and his faults, his natural milas, good points, and his natural bad points, so that one can grow in the good part of himself and one can correct the negative parts of himself, whether it's gearing it to good or whether it's getting rid of it completely. So a wise person knows exactly who he is. And he might even be speaking to a person that's not as wise as him. He still keeps quiet to give the other person his space. That's, I think, a very important and good point. Now we come to the Holy Baal Shem Tov. Says the Holy Baal Shem Tov, quoted by the Netzach Chesed B'Shem Baal Shem Tov, the Holy Kamarna. He says as follows: a chacham, a wise person, doesn't speak in front of he who is greater than him in wisdom and in years. He doesn't speak in front of someone who is greater than him, mimenu daika. In Hebrew it comes out better. In front of the person who his wisdom came from him. All wisdom is from Hashem. All wisdom is a present from Hashem. So when the real tzaddik, the real righteous person, the holy person, speaks in front of Hashem, he is so amazed of the love and the specialness and all the goodness that Hashem does for him in his own private life, in who he is, or in general the love that Hashem does for the people, and for the Jewish people especially, and for the whole world. So much that when he's standing in front of God, he doesn't know if he's a medaber, chai, or daimon. We spoke about this before. He doesn't know whether he's a person or an animal or a rock that doesn't move, because he's just davik b'Hashem. He's just connected so deeply to Hashem and feels that he owes so much to Hashem. And when one is on such a holy level, of course, it's on a very great and holy, special level to be on that level, but a little bit we could touch that level to some extent. A person says Shemona Esrei. There's an unbelievable Rabbeinu Yonah in Tractate Brachos that says, everybody knows that in the morning service and in the night service, and a place the Rebbe says even the afternoon service, but according to the simple interpretation, we first speak about the exodus from Egypt, and then right away we say Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, standing in front of Hashem, the deepest part of the prayer. Says Rabbeinu Yonah that the connection is that when one stands in front of Hashem by Shemona Esrei, one should say to himself, just like Azedus and Ababas, our ancestors, all the generations were answered, the prayers were answered because of their betachon, their being secure in Hashem, in his love to us, and him being right, whatever he does always. But yes, he wants to do only good for us, and he does only good for us. does only good for us. So too this prayer that I'm going to say now, I want to also pray with such fervor and such joy that Hashem will definitely answer me. I can't believe it. I once told a religious person, you're going to daven. Wow, Hashem's going to answer. Hashem is really going to help you. The person says to me, maybe. If it's maybe, so why are you davening? Why are you praying? Why are you praying? I have to tell you, a number of years ago, there was a horrible thing that happened in Israel. There was a soldier, a Jewish soldier, religious Jewish soldier, who Nebuch gave his life for land of Israel, for all of Israel, for the Torah of Israel. And till they got his body, it was horrible. And when they got his body, Nebuch, all his teeth were cut out. It seems the enemies of Israel hurt him so much, Nebuch, they cut out his teeth while he was alive. They said, it was unbelievable. Anyway, but finally, Baruch Hashem, thank God, when they got his body and they were able to give him Kfuras Yisrael, the burial that every Jew is entitled to, with its special halachas and laws. He was an only child, and the elderly parents were American people. They came special to America to travel throughout the whole United States to teach Jewish people, religious people, irreligious people, our brothers and sisters, the importance of having emunah b'tachon in Hashem, being joyfully secure in Hashem and having faith in Hashem and never losing ourselves. And they said, look what we went through, but still. And so, someone asked a great teacher, the whole Klal Yisrael, all of Israel was praying here and in Israel and the whole world. Everybody's praying for this poor soldier before we found out what happened. So how could it be that such a horrible thing happened? And that person said, well, sometimes the answer is no. I beg to differ. It hurt me when I heard that answer because I knew there was something deeper. And I saw something deeper. The Halakha Kajnitz Magid says, there is no prayer that goes unanswered in a positive way, in a joyous way, bringing us, first of all, closer to Mashiach and to our ultimate fixing. There's no question about that. Prayers have to go through four worlds. Atzilas, Bri, Yetzirah, Asiya. Many of you, or most of you, know these things. This world, higher world, all the way up to Hashem. Sometimes the prayer is answered in the other three worlds. And for it to come down to this world, it needs the extra push. It doesn't always have it. Very special. Very special. Because really, every Jewish person is Hashem's only child. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, we're all Bnei Malachim. We're all princes and princesses. So that we're so connected, so high. Just that sometimes for it to come all the way down needs the extra pressure. Very beautiful. Okay, we will now see what the Holy Manistricha says. Mentioned Manistricha in Torah Savis. It's a very, very special, great Rebbe here in this country who came here either before the First World War or between the wars, one of the earlier Rebbes that were here. A person that was immersed in studying day and night and very humble. My father and his brothers used to go to him in the Rockaways for his Shalshidas Torah. He used to speak at the third meal on Shabbos. Always very, very deep. Anyway, so he says as follows. The purpose of wisdom is to be decent and kind and fine to human beings. And such a person does things with wisdom and with Yeshiva Das, presence of his mind, and he's accepted and loved by people. But there's one thing that really encompasses everything, and that's being humble. When the wise person is mitzamtzum himself, holds himself in from showing off his wisdom, that is the real shleimus, that is the wholeness or the wholesomeness of the wisdom. First of all, he doesn't speak in front of someone who is greater than him, because he recognizes that there is someone greater than him. The other type of person is so haughty and so excited about himself that he doesn't even realize that there's someone greater than him. Number two, he doesn't speak in the middle of his friends speaking. He realizes that the other person is also wise as much as him. He's his friend. Again, he's not haughty, he's humble to his friend's wisdom, not greater than him, but he's on his level, recognize his wisdom. We're both wise doesn't mean that my wisdom cancels out your wisdom or it's unimportant because I'm here already. No, might be on the same level as you. Something to be recognized. He's not fast to answer because people who are humble, the humility gives birth to being patient, being slow, not like someone who's haughty that's always ready to answer fast as possible, because he thinks the way he thinks is the answer. Number four, because he's humble, so he'll ask according to the subject and answer according to the halacha. He will go back and forth in his studying, in his learning, and he won't just answer according to what the fast answer that came to him, but rather he will deepen himself in his learning and ask questions and answer, and this will come out that the halacha will be correctly as the Bartanura told us. On another level, the Zohar says that the Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud that we all study, is what brings Mashiach, the coming of Mashiach, of the Messiah, because there's questions and there's answers. So instead of a person having to go through the pain of the exile, God forbid, whether it's physically or emotionally, by being bothered by the question and looking and seeking for an honest answer, that could be, instead of, God forbid, the body or the emotions of the person being bothered, that takes away from the other kind of being hurt or bothered. We mentioned many times about Nebuch in the camps, how Jews were immersed in studying. Countless stories, a lot of them are reported in the book Hasidic Stories from the Holocaust by Professor Eliach. If you didn't read that book, it's worth reading. One of them was, there was a group of Baba Chassidim, they had only one tractate, Beitza, with them. So every day for years, before they threw them into the planetarium, Nebuch, before they killed them, they would work in the labor shops 14, 16, 18 hours a day. Forced labor. But what they made up between themselves was every day one person will study out loud and everyone else will do a little bit more of their work so that he could study. This way they were all studying all day long for the full 16 or 18 hours, so that it hurt less, should we say, because the Torah gives life and protects. Oy. Number four. That was number four. Number five. He answers on the first thing first and the last thing last. There's a deep ethical value over here. And again, he says, like the Baal Shem Tov says, that when you want to praise Hashem, who is the first of all first. When you want to say something negative, say it to yourself, because the human being was created last. The Medrash says, we were created last, but the whole purpose of the whole creation of the whole 7 days was us. Hashem's thought to create the world was for us. B'shvil Yisrael sheni gracious. Because of the holy Jewish people, they are first. So the Talmud says, Medrash says, it's your choice. If you act like a human being and like a Jew should be acting, and you're the first thought in Hashem's mind, you're the purpose of anything and everything in the world, which should make you even more humble to Hashem and to do Hashem's will. If you want to act inhumanly, then Yitish Kadmach, even a fly was created before you, because you were created last. Something that he doesn't hear, or that he didn't hear from his teachers, he says, I didn't hear this. And he doesn't make things up, or even if it's not lying, but he doesn't strengthen his way of thinking and his logic so that in a crooked way he comes out right. Maybe he's not lying. That's also wrong. And the 7th thing is, he admits to the truth, and this attribute is also dependent on being humble. The ladder of truth is being humble. And the ladder of a lie, of lying, is being a Baal Gaiva, a big shot. Have a good night.